it is something so relevant and something that any parent could really glean some benefit of. So we're excited to dive into this topic, and just there's so much there. We know we're not going to get everything, all the details, but we want to just touch on it for our listeners, what it is, what it's about.
Oh yeah. Oh, this is good.
Yeah.
This is a little bit like
Pump you
rock.
up,
Yeah.
right?
Who chose this?
Special request
By
from our
who?
guest.
Ooh.
No. Tristan?
I guess, yeah.
You're a
Old
rocker?
school rocker, yeah.
Really?
I can see it. I can see it.
I don't see it. I mean, look, she's got this lovely
Floral.
salmon-colored cardigan
I
sweater.
could be a sweet girl that likes to rock out.
That's true. I guess that's true.
Rumor has
Don't
it you
judge a book by its
No,
cover.
that's fair. That's fair. I'm guilty.
Rumor
of
has
showing.
it you listen to KLOS.
Oh, back in the day. Back in the day. Yeah.
I don't know what
Do
First
they
of all-
even exist? Are there radio stations?
Well, that's a whole
Are there
different.
radio stations?
KLOS does exist. KMET does not exist.
The Mighty Met.
The Mighty Met.
I have no idea
Yeah,
what
you're
you
too
guys are
young,
talking
you're
about.
too young.
Right?
Nobody,
Radio. Remember
nobody
that?
outside of LA.
Radio what?
Nobody outside of LA knows what radio
podcasts.
stations were.
I kind of tap into my inner Jim Lad.
oh
What?
gosh,
DJ
good night.
All these terms.
What is he
Dusty-
talking about?
Dusty
enough
roads
of you.
over there.
Enough of that. We are so excited. First of all, that our listeners are joining us for another
Yes,
episode of our On Purpose
always.
Parents podcast. We can't figure out why anybody listens, but it's growing. The listening audience is growing.
Our family is growing.
Yeah, we've got like 16,000 YouTube subscribers.
Wow.
We're on our way to our very own. I'm pointing for the people who are listening and not watching. I'm pointing to our children's ministries YouTube silver
YouTube button.
plaque for
The
100,000
award.
subscribers, and now they've got like
Is that 100?
yeah,
Is that
they've got
100? I see.
like what do they have?
They're
Over-
like
they're
700,000, I
close
think.
to- yeah.
Yeah, Saddleback Kids.
Yeah.
They're so great.
Amazing.
They're so amazing.
YouTube.com/Saddleback
So
Kids.
we've got a long way. We'll never catch them, but we will get our own plaque.
Dude.
We will get our own plaque.
totally
They
gonna
can be
catch
our
'em.
inspiration.
We are thrilled to have as our guest, in
So
addition
excited.
to the amazing Grace Yoon, who's always with us, producer Chris, who's always with us. We have a guest with us this episode for what we think is a one-off, because next episode is our 50th
Oh my god!
Wow.
episode
Congratulations.
celebration. Thank you.
I
Who would have
can't believe
thought?
it.
We've not been canceled. We haven't canceled ourselves yet.
We haven't gotten sick of each
Yeah, we
other
haven't gotten
yet.
sick of each other. But Tristan is a wonderful member of our church. She's married to one of our pastors, Max McGee. Tristan McGee is our guest.
Yay!
And a very, thank you, producer Chris.
Thank you very much.
A very quick side note. I
Okay.
promise it'll be quick.
All right.
What nobody else cares about other
Okay.
than me is Tristan's husband, Max, is also a surfer.
Okay.
We're similar in age. He's a few years younger than I am, I think. How old's Max?
Let's put it out there.
I don't know.
Wait, what? You don't know how old your husband is?
69.
No.
That's when he was born.
Oh, he was born in 69. I
So
was gonna say, he's not-
53? Is that 54?
54.
54.
Yeah, he's a couple years
He's
younger
about
than
10
me.
years younger.
But his lifelong-ish best buddy
Okay.
is a surfboard shaper.
Oh,
So,
shaper?
Yeah, well, surfboards are shaped by hand. Or-
What?
yeah, they come in this like
not a
7-foot piece of foam
machine?
called a what?
Blank.
Called a blank. Thank you.
It's not all factory
Well,
made.
yes. Nowadays, a lot of them are factory made, but they're made off of like templates that were hand shaped.
Okay.
And you can,
Oh.
and the majority of, especially professional surfers and stuff, they're still hand shaped, custom.
Wow.
So they'll make like stock standard boards,
Right.
that the average Joe can buy off the shelf, like me.
Okay.
And then they have custom boards that the
my.
professional. Or I could order a custom board, but
Right, you
there's
can pay
no
for
there's
it.
no reason for me to.
But
I'm not-
customized to what? Like to your preference?
Yeah.
To your
Shoes,
weight?
yeah.
To your weight?
Yep.
Everything.
Your
Like it's
style
all
of
the
surfer, your style-
dynamic of
yep.
the
type of wave you're gonna surf.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
The length.
The length.
Length.
Yep.
Oh my goodness.
It all
So
plays in.
so Max's good buddy Matt Biolis
Okay.
has become. He's been around for a while, but in the last decade probably, and I think universally right now would be recognized as if not the top surfboard shaper, surf company, surf
Wow.
brand, certainly in the top 5 or 3 worldwide.
Huh.
And he's a local. He lives right here in San Clemente, which is a half hour down the road from us. And the current female women's champion
Okay.
rides a Mayhem. That's the brand Mayhem
sweet
board.
plug.
Of this company.
Sweet
Mayhem.
plug.
Uh-huh.
I think the guy that came in third in the men's world rankings rides a Mayhem.
Wow.
And in the last
Right
couple
up there.
years, in addition to like individual championships, they now give out a team or a board brand championship, and they basically take all the points that were assigned to all the riders during
Okay.
the tour. So think NASCAR, right?
Okay, yeah.
The surf,
Oh, yeah,
the
yeah,
Surf
like-
the surf tour is like NASCAR. You get points based on where you finish each week.
Okay.
And at the end, there's a champion.
Okay.
But they also now give out points to the shaper
Okay.
or the surfboard company that those people were riding. So if you add up all the professional surfers,
Who knew we were going?
Producer Chris, does anybody care about this?
Wow.
Does anybody care?
Producer Chris is in the corner scratching his head right now.
This is
What is
what you
happening
think
to
of
this
when you-
podcast?
This is what I think about.
What happens to
My
so they add up the
husband's friend.
points?
So just like they add up all the women's points and they
Okay.
get a champion.
Okay.
They add up all the men's points and they get a champion, basically. The format has changed a little bit in recent years, but we won't go into
Okay, we
that.
won't
Yeah.
go into the details.
Yeah.
They add up all those points and they go, what boards were they riding? What brand of boards were
they
they
get the points.
riding? And they get points. And Mayhem, Matt Biolas' company, Max's best buddy, they won the
Best
board
man at their wedding.
Best man at the wedding.
Wow, I knew
the-
that didn't get you.
That does get me.
But they what? They won?
They won the shaper, the
Oh,
board
wow.
championship. But yeah, it's great.
Wow,
Yeah.
Kurt is really into
know. He knows
your
more than I do.
husband's
I-
best friend's
Yeah.
company. So
Well,
if Matt
I
is
guess if
listening
you're a
to this
surfer.
episode,
Yes.
please send Kurt
He does
a
have 4
customized
kids, so
board.
you never know.
Kurt is a huge fan.
I have 4
He's
surfboards,
fanning
a
right
long
now.
board,
Yeah.
a soft top.
Yeah.
But the 2 boards, like the boards I ride 99% of the time, are both Mayhem boards.
Nice.
Oh
Yeah.
my goodness. Well,
So there we go.
There we go.
Nobody cares.
By
but
the way-
let's-
Are you
let's-
going to ask for a signature or something
Nope.
on that
Nope.
board? Give
no,
her the-
he's
give
gonna
her
get
the
a
board
he's
out.
gonna get a free surfboard for all the
you
plugs
don't.
that he's doing.
No, you
We're
don't. Come on, you guys. You don't try to take advantage of it. I'm just talking.
You love it.
I'm just
You're-
talking because
you
I'm a
love it.
fan.
Yeah.
I'm just a
Yeah.
fan.
You
All right,
know
so
that
Anyway.
connection.
Also, there is salt water in that cup. I think you drink salt water.
I'm impressed
this
that you
morning.
even know that there's that connection.
Wow.
And you know that much about it.
Right. He
As a
definitely knows
surfer,
a lot.
Well,
I would think you would.
All of my best, but everybody I surf with, they all live in San Clemente.
so
and
they know
I I surf in San Clemente 2 days a week, and Mayhem is their home base is San Clemente.
You and Max
And
should surf together.
we've talked about it. Max and I have talked about going surfing together for 10 years, and we've never
Now it
and
needs
we've
to happen.
never gone surfing
After this
together.
episode, it
I
needs to
know.
happen
Yeah.
for
So
real.
I don't know why it hasn't.
Yeah.
All right.
So
Anyway.
for parents who
Tristan,
are
but
tuning
Tristan,
in,
I surf too. I want you to know that I surf also.
Chris.
Wow.
Chris.
Sorry, Grace.
All right.
oh my goodness.
So that's a very long introduction.
Yeah. So parents who are tuning in, we want to just maybe for the first time, we do want to clarify this is not a surf podcast.
No.
We are a parenting podcast. And, just to bring it back, what is our mission, Kurt? What is our
The purpose behind
Our
the
purpose,
podcast, the
yes.
reason we do the podcast has nothing to do with surfing.
is nothing to do with
has
surfing.
nothing to do with any of the nonsense we talk about the first 5 minutes of every episode.
But
But it does have a goal, and that is
Mm-hmm.
that the purpose of our On Purpose Parents podcast is to help parents
Mm-hmm.
raise. We've landed
Yes.
on a goal for parenting. There's 1,000 goals for parenting. We've just decided, for the sake of this conversation on our podcast,
Yes.
the majority of our topics would be aimed to help parents raise children who are interdependent, lifelong followers of Jesus who want to make a kingdom contribution.
beautiful.
That we think that's the goal. It's not what college they go to,
Yep.
what job do they pursue, how old should they be when they get married, how do I help them make the junior varsity cheerleading squad. That's all good and fine, good and well. That's all
Yes.
fine. That's not what we're about.
Yeah.
We think all of that stuff matters, but doesn't matter as much as raising lifelong, interdependent followers of Jesus who want to make a kingdom contribution.
Awesome. And I have a connection
Oh, no.
with that.
With what?
With all the things that you said at the beginning with surfing.
Yes.
And our topic today
Oh,
and our
boy.
guest. So true to our goal and our mission for this podcast, normally it's Curtin, me, and producer Chris, and we're just talking generally, more general parenting concepts, our lessons learned, things that we've learned in our experience. And I would say that's like what did you say? The surfboard that just comes factory
Like off the
made,
shelf, like
off the
the
shelf,
standard.
the stuff that you have, the surfboards
Yes.
that you have.
Yes.
But I just learned this morning, thanks to your great intro, that there are customized surfboards.
Yes.
There are people called shapers,
Yes.
surfboard shapers.
Yes.
I'm learning something new, but that's taking your custom, your factory made, off the shelf surfboard and customizing it to the
Yes.
person.
Yes.
And what we're so excited about today is that we have our wonderful guest, Tristan, who is going to help dive into a parenting approach and a strategy that is a little bit more customized than the typical generic parenting concepts that Kurt and I would talk about.
Look at that
was
segue.
good.
That was
Yes,
good.
thank you.
Producer Chris would never have come up with such a. His,
Oh my
His
goodness.
attempts to talk surfing, like
Is about, like,
oh my goodness,
Board bending.
board bending.
Yeah.
What other words do you have?
I don't know.
Driftwood.
Driftwood.
Jumping, I don't
that's
know.
a real thing.
I'm
but-
just trying to
surfing.
connect. Everyone just tries to connect.
So Grace,
So the
thank
topic
you.
today, which is so exciting, is diving into this approach called Trust-Based Relational Interventions, or short-term TBRI. And we know in our conversations before we started recording that Tristan was letting us know that the origins of this was really stemming from how parents with children that are adopted internationally could be more equipped with some of the needs that were being discovered with these children, mostly that had a background in trauma background. But one of the things that has really been developing over the last few years is that these concepts under TBRI is so applicable in so many ways, not just if you're a parent with an internationally adopted child. And so we want to, while it is customized and maybe the origins of TBRI focus on a very narrow subset of children and parenting experience, it is something so relevant and something that any parent could really glean some benefit of. So we're excited to dive into this topic, and just there's so much there. We know we're not going to get everything, all the details, but we want to just touch on it for our listeners, what it is, what it's about, and just pique interest and provide resources to parents who might be wondering, what is this? How is it relevant to me? How could it apply in my situation? Does it even apply in my situation? Sure. And how can it ultimately help us with our parenting goals that we've talked about on this podcast? So, do you want to, just go ahead and maybe just introduce yourself? I know we
Sure.
rambled quite a bit at the very beginning, as we normally do. So welcome to our funny family here. I'm really glad to have you with us. But can you just introduce yourself and how you even got into TBRI and what your experience is with TBRI to introduce yourself to our listeners?
Sure. Back in 2010, I became a TBRI practitioner. I was volunteering here with Saddleback's Initiative for Vulnerable Children, and was invited to practitioner training, which actually is a nice honor. It's not an easy thing to get in, but that was a while ago, and things are different now. But and like you had said, TBRI is all over the place now. So now it's actually in courtrooms, classrooms. So there's a lot of people wanting to figure out what is this thing all about. But back then, so I became a practitioner, and that just opened the doors for a lot, that God wanted to do in my life. And one of those things was we adopted ourselves, my husband Max and I. And so that was when we first started to actually apply this stuff. So
Yeah.
implement the head knowledge, right? And so that's
Sure.
where the rubber meets the road. And we found out this is harder than it sounds. It sounds pretty easy and obvious, but it really is. It's challenging. It's
Well,
hard
and
work.
it's
Hard
yeah,
work raising a kid
it
with
is.
trauma background.
It is hard work. Well, and you're going to kind of dig into it a little bit with us, but when you said that, I thought, yeah, parenting's hard work. This is an intentional, like you choose when anytime you dive into like a philosophy or a strategy, and TBRI is one of many, right?
Yes.
In some ways, our whole podcast is a parenting strategy that these two can coexist beautifully. But it's kind of that reminder in parenting that nothing good happens by accident.
Right.
You can just parent by the the ebbs and flows and whatever is happening, respond
Just
to
gut
today's
reaction
needs,
to
just gut
things,
reaction, and kids are resilient and they'll figure it out, and I'm doing the best I can, and you can do that, and lots of parents do. And you're rolling the dice with there's no guarantees, no matter how strategic you are, that you can't guarantee what the journey your child will be on. But I love the reminder of intentional parenting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Parenting with an end in mind, being willing to think about some things. And a lot of what I know this much about TBRI, very little. But what I do know is there is a lot of intentionality and a lot of work that goes into it. But I think the rewards
Absolutely.
are really, really,
Yeah.
they show up.
So one of the things that there may be some parents or listeners who have heard about TBRI from the surface, but one of the things that's most commonly associated with TBRI that's just thrown out there a lot now is the word attachment and attachment theory. It's kind of becoming a hipper thing, but can you just explain to our listeners who may have only a surface understanding or have just heard attachment? How are your attachment theories, or what's your attachment? These are actually things that I've heard that I've always been like, what is that exactly? And explain how is that connected to TBRI at all?
Yeah. So TBRI, Trust-Based Relational Intervention, it is attachment-based. It's evidence-based.
Okay.
And attachment, when you say trust, right? Trust comes through attachment. And it usually happens in that first year of life. You and I are not aware of it, but we actually have attachment styles. You and I both do. All of us do. But we're not aware of it because it's kind of programmed into us before we're even having words and language. But as our brain is developing and those neural pathways are growing in those first few years of life, we're with our primary caregivers.
Right.
And so what happens when an infant has a need? What do?
Cry.
They cry.
They cry. Right? What do they
Yeah.
do when they're hungry?
They cry.
What do they do when their diapers wet?
Right.
They cry harder.
Yeah.
When they scream.
Yes, when they want attention, when they wake up, when they're tired,
Right.
they cry.
Right.
Our job as parents is to figure out what that need is and meet that need. So imagine in the life of an infant, how many times does that happen in a day?
Oh my goodness.
Hundreds.
Nonstop.
Each time, your kiddo has a need, parent meets the need, it comforts a child over and over. Trust is built.
Right.
That's the basis of
Yep.
attachment.
Gotcha.
So when we're dealing with kids who have a trauma background, they don't have that.
Something was broken in that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those
Yeah.
needs weren't being met.
So we're going back and we got to build that trust.
Right.
So we're building that trust through relationship.
Gotcha.
That's good.
Because kids who are
Gotcha.
harmed in relationship, they're going to be healed through
Yeah.
relationship.
I see. So with the whole attachment theory and TBRI is the idea that there is good attachment and or bad attachment. And is it trying to
maybe
get
the-
at that
Yeah, or maybe lack thereof.
lack of attachment,
Yeah.
something functionally broken that ultimately harms trust?
Right.
So before we started this podcast, you talked a little bit about just a mindset that TBRI has that's really helpful to be aware of. And you gave an illustration of like an iceberg.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that and what you were sharing with us before we started recording?
Yeah, let's tie that into this attachment also. Is so the other thing that's happening with attachment and how TBRI is tied into that is when you think of that infant crying, the parent is that what we would call an external regulator. The parent is regulating that infant's emotions and physical well-being, right? When that infant cries, if you don't answer that, what happens?
They keep crying. They cry harder.
Yes.
They're not happy.
They screech, they turn red, their
Yeah.
tears are happening. But when that parent comes and meets that need, what happens physiologically, they calm down.
Right.
They can't do that on their own. They don't have the ability to self-regulate. They need an external regulator, which you and I are. And so self-regulation, in a sense, is taught through those early interactions. And
Right.
so when you think about it, and kids with behaviors who have a hard time regulating their own behavior, a lot of times they missed out. And so they don't have that ability to self-regulate as well as a kid who was externally regulated and then co-regulated.
Right.
Right? So then they're doing it together in this kind of dance. And then that lays the foundation for self-regulation.
Yep.
But what we see instead with kids who have missed out on some of those important things is a lot of challenging behaviors, a hard time self-regulating. And so when we think about behaviors, we think about that's leading into the iceberg is if all behavior is communication and what we see is the tip of the iceberg as behavior. That's what we see. And we know from the movie Titanic, there's a lot more going on underneath that iceberg, right?
Oh, yes.
And so it's much bigger. And so what
Right.
we don't see, what is beneath the tip, what is holding up that tip of the iceberg, what's holding up that behavior, and
Right.
in a sense, we could say driving it,
Yep.
is the way that trauma has affected the brain, the biology, the body, and the belief system. So there's changes that actually happen physiologically that then make it hard for that kid.
Right.
So
Oh, wow.
we see willful disobedience, right? We
Right.
see
Yeah, just why are
all
you-
these behaviors, you name it, lying, stealing, disrespect, whatever
Yeah.
it is. That's
Yeah.
what we see. But what TBRI teaches us is let's look beyond that because those are maladaptive behaviors, right? That they have somehow learned. So we need to respect and honor their history that they're coming with us, to us with, and saying, okay, what else is going on here?
Right.
What's driving this
Right.
behavior?
Wow.
Wow.
Can you just say that again? So, because that was just so profound.
The four
Yeah.
B's, was it 4B words?
Is it all? Was it all
Yeah.
4 B's?
Oh,
That's
yeah,
pretty
yeah,
cool.
We
yeah.
call it the
Yeah.
5 B's.
The five
So
Bs.
the fifth is the behavior, right? That we see.
What you see. That's the visible,
Yes,
obvious
yes.
action.
That's
and then
the symptom, really.
That's a
That's the
symptom.
symptom.
So that's the tip of the iceberg.
That's the tip of the iceberg.
that's the thing that we normally
React
just
to.
You react to, and that's
Yeah.
where we stay. We
That's
stay
what
at the
focus
surface.
on. How can we change this behavior?
Yeah. Why are you acting like that?
Yeah.
Don't act like that.
Yeah.
But then beneath the surface are 4 more B's.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which,
what were they
which
again?
Dr. Bruce Perry, right? You know, I know you guys have mentioned that book before, What Happened to You, by Dr. Bruce Perry and Oprah Winfrey, right?
Right.
And so that's what those 4 underlying B's are saying. And like, hey, it's not why are you doing that? Like, what's wrong with you? It's what happened to you. And it's because you're shaped differently.
Right.
Your brain,
Okay.
when you're in that state of what we would call fight, flight, or freeze, like your needs are going chronically unmet, you're in survival mode. So you have survival-based behaviors, fight, flight, or freeze. That part of the brain, the amygdala, it actually becomes hyper-developed. So you get more neural pathways going to that because that's what's keeping you alive and surviving
Right.
in this situation.
For these kids with trauma
Yeah.
background,
Yeah.
they've had to, like, under the surface, under the behavior, there's impact on the brain. Your brain physiologically is stronger to react fight, flight, or
Yes.
freeze mode.
Yes. To keep them safe.
Right.
Yeah.
And then what was the second
And
B?
then biology.
Biology.
So if you think about stress and the stress hormones, cortisol, adrenaline, your body's constantly flowing with that. What does that do?
Yeah.
Right there. That's toxic stress,
Yep.
which we know, if you know, have heard about the ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, which is a big famous study that kind of put the idea of toxic stress on the books or whatever
Right.
you
On the
call it.
radar.
On the radar.
Yeah.
On the map.
On the map. But that was about they found out that these older male men had a lot more health problems later on in life, depending on how much early childhood adversity they had. That it
Wow.
actually physically altered
Wow.
the
Right.
outcomes of their health.
Wow.
And then the
And
third
so
B
is the body.
is the body.
Yeah. And so they can also have a lot more sensory related issues
Right.
happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sensitivity.
And we can see, the, body expression, a lot more headaches. Yeah. Stomach aches, different kinds of things, all related back. And then the belief system.
The belief system.
Yeah.
What
So-
you think about, is the world a good place?
Yeah. Is it safe?
Am I lovable?
Yeah. Are people safe? Are people for comfort?
Yeah.
Or my child's, experiences were no, they're competition. Competition for love, competition for attention, resources, food. It's a dog eat dog world. And that's actually literally wired into your brain.
Wow.
Versus are people for comfort? Do they
Right.
come when I have a need? Am I safe? Do I know I'm precious? Like I have a voice when I cry, someone comes.
Right.
I'm special.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah.
Am I heard?
That's incredible.
Right?
Yeah. I can see the attraction of TBRI because it, instead of just being, if you are a parent with a child with trauma and you are dealing with behavior that is undesirable or very difficult to challenge, it could feel so overwhelming and out of control. But this helps break down
Yeah.
and demystify it. I don't think it makes it easier.
Right.
It's still very challenging, but it does help. I mean, even just listening and thinking about, just friends that I have and different experiences, it does help to have words to put to what might be happening. That
Yeah.
underneath the surface of behavior, there have been ways that children have been impacted from birth to early
Right.
childhood, the attachments, whether their needs were met, and that has a profound impact on all of these things underneath the surface that can really affect
Yes.
how they interact with other humans
Yeah.
Right.
and the behaviors that they go.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Could you share then with, I know under TBRI, with that foundation, attachment theory and the behavior and the things that are underneath the behavior, there are some like guiding principles and some strategies that TBRI shares with parents. What are some of those guiding principles and strategies? I know there's so much
Yeah.
and we won't be able to get into it, but just to kind of introduce us to
Sure.
the world of, technique and strategy under TBRI.
Yeah. Yeah. So TBRI is a framework of parenting, and it works for, parents with kids of any ages and any stages and any kind of background. It's just was originally created for kids with trauma. It's trauma informed. It understands that aspect of things, which can also be, kids that come from divorce or coming out of COVID, or a
Wow,
parent
yeah.
dies. So, it doesn't necessarily have to mean adoption or foster care. We all could probably agree
Right.
we have experienced
Yeah.
trauma
Right. Yep.
at some point in our life. So it's a framework, and there's 3 sets of principles.
Okay.
The heart of which and the foundation of which is connection. So that's meeting those relational needs of the child. And that's where we say, kids harmed in relationship are going to be healed through relationship. And that's that trust-based relational aspect of TBRI. And then everything else we do is through that relationship and connection. And the second principle, and there's a couple sets of strategies for each of these that have some practical application, but these are just, we're keeping it high
Yeah.
level,
Yeah.
right? And then the next one is empowering principles, and those are designed to meet the physical needs of the child. So dealing with the physiology aspect that we talked about, and then also the environment any sensitivities they might have. So being proactive and addressing those. And then the last one is the correcting. And that is designed to meet those kind of fear-based behavioral needs.
Yeah.
So how do parents handle those challenging behaviors?
Wow.
That's
such a helpful framework.
Yeah, and this is so good. And I think I'm going to pivot for a second.
Yeah.
And say that while this was meant to just kind of be a one-off on a parenting strategy, TBRI, and what that can help, how that can help trauma parents who are raising kids who have gone through trauma.
Right.
It's way bigger than that.
Yeah.
It's way more universally applicable than that thin lane of parenting.
Yeah.
I think we need to ask Tristan to come back.
Yes.
Because, I mean, you know, that everything
I'm on
she's
board.
just talking about, I'm going, okay.
Yeah, let's
That's
do
an
it.
episode in and of itself.
Give me more about the connected piece.
Did
Right.
you want me to bring
Principle.
Give me
that?
more about the empowering principle. What's
Yeah.
that?
Did you want me to bring that?
I do.
That is
that
the real
your
I
true
do.
motivation.
down at
No.
But yes, I would
So,
love to come back.
Oh, we will have you back. Next episode is our 50th, so we got to do something for that. But would it be correct to kind of frame it in this idea that parents have a choice? We always have a choice. Kids always act out. There's behavior. It doesn't matter what your background, how you're raising your children. It doesn't matter where in the country or the world you live, what your ethnicity, your social economic. We got our kids have behaviors that bother us as parents,
Yep.
and some of it should bother us, right?
Yep.
They
Yeah,
act out.
absolutely.
They do. There's a sin nature in all of us. That's, you know, right? Some of it's just how we're born in this sinful world, and then some of it is a whole bunch of it is how our trauma and our background and all this stuff. Parents have a choice. I can either just constantly deal with the tip of the iceberg, the behavior. I'm going to respond. I'm going to correct. I'm going to respond. I'm going to correct. I'm going to figure out how to deal with it, because that is wrong.
Yeah.
And you're going to do that for your entire child.
18
You
years.
can do it for 18 years. Or you can spend the same amount of time, because we parent.
Yeah.
Parenting is a journey.
Yeah.
Dealing with and recognizing and maybe navigating all the stuff below the surface, the other pieces of the iceberg that might, as we address that in a more holistic, healthy way, suddenly we might have a better chance at, in a healthy way, correcting
Yeah.
the behavior that's so concerning.
Yeah.
We have a choice. We're going to address it. Every parent's going to address the behavior. We can either do it in a response, fix it right now, or we can do it in a more what's below the surface. And TBRI,
It's all right. It's complicated.
TBRI
Yes.
is one very well-respected, trusted approach to dealing with the stuff below the surface. Is that kind of a fair,
It's
healthy way to
totally.
explain it?
It's the way I always
Okay.
say to people. It's like, you're going to put that energy out either way.
Yes. Yes.
You might as well put it out in a way that's going to hopefully decrease those symptoms.
Right.
Like with
Yeah.
any health issue,
Yes.
if you deal with just symptoms,
Right.
it doesn't mean that
Right.
root cause is going to go away.
Right.
But if you
Yeah.
deal with the underlying root or the underneath the iceberg, right,
Yep.
the symptoms
Yes.
are going to.
It's awesome. And
Solve.
nothing happens by accident. Nothing
Yes.
good happens by accident. It takes intentionality. This is TBRI is an intentional strategy
Yes.
to raise our kids
Yeah.
Yep.
in healthy environments, so that maybe they have even a better chance of becoming interdependent, lifelong followers of Jesus who want to make a kingdom contribution.
I love it.
Okay,
For
Tristan,
sure.
we're bringing you
Thank
back.
you.
We just
We need
scratched
to.
the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
We got more to dig into.
Right.
Hey, as always, please tell your friends about the podcast. We would love it if you would hit like. If you want to subscribe, you can do that right here if you're watching on YouTube. We will see you soon.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.